everyone, Amber here. So today I'm going to be talking about my experience with losing my friend to suicide. Not that experience in and of itself, but my life since that. What that's looked like, and then working through this trauma with my counselor to figure out what kind of thought processes are in my mind regarding it that I either consciously or subconsciously to work through them and reassociate with something that would give more benefit to my life than the harm in right now. I think I'm going to just jump into the solutions and the thought processes so you can relate. And then if there's any information about what my experience was, I can answer that as well as I'm going through if it's necessary to tell this. So I think the first question that I had asked myself, that I've realized I've been asking myself, is like, did I do enough? Like, in the loss of my friend, did I do enough? Like, was I there, like, preemptively? So my friend, he had texted me, like, a week before, and he was drunk, and he was expressing some pain with me. And at this time, I was 15, so I didn't really realize suicide was an option, so I didn't take him seriously. And I was, like, joking. I was like, oh, like, you're, whatever, like, you're just drunk, you don't know, like, basically saying his experience wasn't real and or valid or shared or anything. And that hit me of like, wow, like I just neglected that. Like I didn't even do anything. My counselor also pointed out like I can't hold myself accountable for what I didn't know. Like, and if we constantly do that with ourselves, then it's just not going to look good. If I'm, when I'm 30 or 40 or 50, holding myself accountable for what I know then as to how I acted now in my 20s, like that's not fair to my 20-year-old self or my 30-year-old self because I'm still beating myself up for something I didn't know. So I think it's just knowing that we're doing the best we can with what we have right now and what we're aware of right now. So that was the question for me, was like, did I do enough? Like, because I knew, he told me like a week before, like, could I have stopped? Like, did I do enough? I had a feeling to text him the day before he committed suicide, just to check in on him. And I did do it because I was like, well, like today was a little bit overwhelming. I'll just do it the next day. And in between that time is when he killed himself. And so it was very difficult for me to not feel like I hadn't done enough. Like I was given options and didn't take them, opportunities and didn't take them. That's also made me feel like when I see someone else suffering, it's up to me to step in and do something. Yeah. So then I'm just gonna I kind of have some notes over here, so I'm just gonna kind of read them. In conversation with other people now, I realize that I push and like push for deep conversation because I'm trying to see. I thought it was because I wanted to know them well, and I think that's still true, but it's also like I'm pushing to make sure they're good. Like, so every time I come into someone, I ask like, in my mind that I wasn't aware of, like, is this someone who needs saving? So I push and push and push, like, do you need saving that you're not telling me about? Like, do you need saving? Do you need to be saved? Do I need to help you? And in doing that, if I do that when it's just based on my fear rather than them sharing with me something is wrong and that I need to be pushing, or that, I guess it's never my responsibility to push, still working on that, obviously, but when it's out of my fear, I'd be pushing for me to feel like I've done enough so I can check the box that I didn't forget to ask any questions rather than for the benefit of the person I'm talking to. It's more for the benefit of me. Even though it could benefit them, like the primary purpose is to serve myself. That's just that page. So in that, I find a lot of questions of like, well, what if they do need saved? Like, what if it's not bad for me to be rescuing them? Because there's like I think it's a triangle. I don't know where the people are, but like probably like rescuer, prosecutor, victim. So as the rescuer, you're trying to like save other people. And the rescuer is always going to find a reason for rescuing. Who can blame someone for trying to help other people and caring? So it's my way of trying to be in the right, is like, well, you can never be wrong for rescuing, which isn't true because it's harmful for yourself and the people around you because they're good and you just keep trying to rescue them. And so in my friend's suicide, I've also felt that through that experience that I was negligent for not catching it before or not doing something and stepping in. And then my counselor shared with me that negligence is not the asking of the magic question to open someone up, which like shocked my mind because I was like, whenever I talk with someone, I try to look for that magic question that would get them to open up to me so I can look and make sure that they're good. and but negligence is instead like there's this huge warning sign, or they tell me like I'm considering killing myself and I don't do anything. That's negligence. Negligence is not trying to dig enough so that you can save them if you need to. The way that my counselor worded holding my later year self accountable for what I didn't know at that age, 15 in my case. So the way he said it is holding myself at 15 years old accountable to all of the knowledge I have gained as a 21-year-old doesn't seem fair. Which is true. Like, that's not fair to my 15-year-old self to have that responsibility put on them for not having known. And it's not fair to my 21-year-old self for feeling guilty still for what I didn't know at 15 and what I know now. Like, I should be proud of myself for what I've learned and knowing I can use those tools to help people now. Shocking. This is just shocking information to me. So through one of the counseling sessions, we were doing some trauma work. And these are just some things that I had accomplished through that trauma work. One is shifting away from self-blame because of these epiphanies or conversations we've had. The other is shifting away from accepting too much responsibility because I realized the responsibility of his life was never mine. So there was never a point where his life became my responsibility because it was always his responsibility. And because there was no switch, I can't lose what I didn't have. It's not like, oh, like, I failed my responsibility. I never had that responsibility. There was no switch. So that was just crazy. Like, I'm trying to think, like, what was the moment that his life became my responsibility? Like, what sign, what statement, what time in his life did it become? And it never was. So I can't lose responsibility for a responsibility that was never mine. It was his responsibility for his life always, just like my life is my responsibility and the next person's is theirs. Also, I have a lot of anxiety from that experience. Not necessarily just relating to that experience, but because of that experience, I've developed anxiety or fallen into anxiety, tripped and fell into it. I don't know how you would describe coming into anxiety, but I've always been a little bit anxious, but never to this extent. And so realizing that my anxiety is because I've realized that there's pain in the world. That's when I realized there's pain in the world. That's when I realized pain was real to myself and those around me. And like, I recognize my privilege of not having realized until I was 15 years old and my friend committed suicide that there was pain in the world. But also, like, because I realized it then, that's when my anxiety started. So having anxiety at that point, I realized that there were negative things that could happen to me and those I love. And so anxiety was my attempt to control those things. Because if I could recognize them, first of all, and, like, anxiety is just, like, for me, it's just, like, the perpetuation of, like, overthinking the consequences. And so if I could overthink them enough, if I could consider all of the possible consequences and make a choice to avoid them, then nothing bad would ever happen to me or the people I love. Which isn't true. I recognize that. Like, and I don't want you to think it's true, because it's not. But still trying to figure out why it's not true. But I understand that it's not mentally. And so, yeah, that's been, like, a really big realization for me, is that I've used anxiety as a form of control. Even though I can't control anything by thinking about it in here, it still, like, to me, feels more controlled than having to sit there with my emotions and feel sad, because that's what I've been avoiding when I have anxiety, because I want to avoid feeling sad again, because that was rough. I'm to challenge my approach of turning an emotion into anxiety so I can feel like I can manage it. Instead, I'm to practice sitting with and acknowledging any emotion that is there. Which is, like, hard, because, like, I'd much rather control the emotions, but you can't do that, so. At least not healthy, because then I just feel all these emotions that are unrecognized and unsat with. And then that leads to more anxiety, because there's all these emotions underneath my anxiety. So that's fantastic. And through this experience, I've learned a lot. I've been gifted with a lot more discernment in others, figuring out when they need help, what's going on, figuring out their motivation. I guess like just the behind the scenes of someone's life are things that I've been able to figure out and identify easier and discern. And so my counselor realized that in discernment, that gift, I also am to work on discerning compassion and kindness for myself, because if I can discern that for others or discern anything for other people, I should be able to, or not should be able to, but I have the opportunity to also discern kindness and compassion for myself and when that is to be utilized. So these are just some conclusions I've come to in my experience with losing my friend to suicide. And I recognize that the proper term for someone is death by suicide rather than committing suicide, because we want to decriminalize it. And I recognize that. And in my discussion, I've said like committed suicide, because for me, I did feel like he committed it, like my friend committed it against me, because I felt like he left me, which is a whole other batch of things. I recognize I'm not speaking as I would if I was speaking to someone else about their loss. I would like to say death by suicide instead, but just in my experience, I feel like committed speaks more to my emotions behind it. And that was the terminology at the time as well. So that's what I associate with my loss. Yeah, so I hope this is helpful maybe in working through your emotions. I just love hearing what people learn in therapy, and I think that that would be so helpful to not have to avoid therapy, but maybe just like, maybe if you can't go to therapy, just learning it on your own, or getting a head start, or like adding some more to the therapy you're already attending. So I just think it's so incredibly helpful, and I just want to share that with you. And I am not done with my trauma approach counseling regarding this instance. I don't know when I'll be done, if there is a done, but I just wanted to share along the way, because I think this is a good point to which I have some things to speak on. So hope you guys, I think once again, these hard topics, just take a minute, take some deep breaths, relax, identify the emotions, work through them before you go on to the next thing after this video. So hope this has been helpful, and take care until next time. The way that he worded, he being my counselor, worded turning emotion into, starts with an I, motivation and